Hi, everybody. I'm Nick Pope. I'm the programming director for the 18th annual Tallgrass Film Festival. Thanks so much for tuning in with us for this question and answer session for the wonderful film Vinyl Nation. We're really lucky to have with us today the directors and producers of that film, Kevin Smokler and Christopher Boone. Kevin, Hi, Kevin. How are you?
Nick, great to see you in person. I feel like, we've been communicating plenty, but it's great to attach a face and a person to all of that.
I love this virtual meeting. This is great. Yeah. So Kevin is a pop culture author based out of San Francisco. His most recent book is called Brat Pack America, a love letter to 80s teen movies. I know about 1,000 people who would love to check that out. His articles and criticisms have also appeared in the LA Times, BuzzFeed, NPR, and a number of other publications. Vinyl Nation is his feature debut. So welcome, Kevin.
Thanks, Nick. Great to be here.
Of course. And Christopher Boone is a screenwriter and filmmaker out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. His previous film is a narrative feature called Cents, as in dollars and cents, C-E-N-T-S. And Vinyl Nation is his debut documentary feature. He's a contributing writer to No Film School and a frequent panel moderator at the Austin Film Festival. So, fellas, thanks so much for being here. So, I guess I'll start by saying, it only felt like a matter of time before the Vinyl Resurgence documentary hit the market at some point. But it feels kind of serendipitous that it came in 2020 because, so for all of the turmoil that we've had this year, this is the year that vinyl in almost 30 years outpaced CD sales. So I guess I'm kind of wondering, let's just start from the beginning, how did all this come to fruition? And I'm kind of wondering if you guys had worked together before. Is this your first project? So maybe when and how did all of this start?
This is Kevin. It started in about, I would say 2018 is when Chris and I started talking about it. It was March of 2018 where I had just finished touring for Brat Pack America, the book you mentioned. And I was at an artist residency in Illinois and kind of wondering what I wanted to do next and thinking that I had a really good time on the book tour stops I had done in Albuquerque that were set up by Chris. Chris and I had gone to college together. We were a couple of years apart and didn't overlap all that much, but we knew and respected each other's work and that sort of thing. And it was Chris who invited me to come to Albuquerque because he was very plugged into the local film community there to say, hey, you're doing this book about 80s teen movies. Let's set up a screening of Heather's or Breakfast Club or some kind of wonderful talk about the book, sell a few copies, have some green chili, and talk movies. It sounded great to me. So we did that, and we had so much fun the first time and worked so well together. We did it 4 or 5 times. And in March of 2018, when I was wondering what to do next, I called Chris and I said, maybe there's something we can do together. And he said, like what? And I said, well, maybe we can make a movie together. And he goes, well, why don't you see my movie and see if you like what you see? And I said, okay. And I went ahead and I watched Sense and I thought it was amazing. And I said, yeah, I think you know how to do this. And I think we know how to work together. And if you can handle the fact that I'm a real greenhorn at all of this, maybe we've got something. But word of warning, I've only written nonfiction before, so that's all I know how to do. So it would probably be like a documentary. And he said, okay, you have any documentary ideas? And I said, I have one. And that is, I'm wondering what there is to say about the comeback of vinyl records. Not why, because by the time we started talking about that comeback was 10 years going, and there wasn't enough for a 90-minute document. There wasn't enough that hadn't been said for a 90-minute documentary about it. So instead, the question we focused on was, what does it mean? spiritually, artistically, culturally, what does it say about our relationship to music and to each other as people who love music? And that's where we started from. And that spring and summer, we just talked on the phone once a week, every Friday morning, to try and see if we actually had something. And then I think it was maybe mid-fall in 2018 where Chris said, hey, you know what? If we're going to make this movie, it should come out in 2020. I said, really? He goes, yeah, it's an election year. This is going to be an upbeat movie. It's going to be a difficult time. We didn't anticipate a pandemic, obviously, but it's going to be, we're making an upbeat movie. It's going to be counter-programming to what's going on in America. And I said, that sounds like a great idea. And he said, okay, well, if the movie's coming out in 2020, we've got to complete post-production on this date, principal photography on this date, raise money on this date, and we should have started last Tuesday. And I said, well, I guess we're getting started then. And that's kind of how it went from a series of conversations into a documentary reality.
And I would say that when Kevin brought the idea to me, I was interested in it. Kevin had gotten back into records about 2007, right at the beginning of records ticking back up again in popularity. I hadn't come to records again until about 2014. But I was really interested in exploring the topic because I have a teenage daughter. She's 17 now, but she got a turntable about a year after my wife and I did. And I was fascinating to watch her buy records when all she knew before that was streaming, either first through iTunes and then through Spotify. CDs was never on her radar. So it was the only physical format of music that she's ever known really or owned. And the ability to give her music as a gift in a physical format was really special to me. So I was intrigued from that aspect, but I knew there was a lot more there. So I wanted to go digging. And also I was always interested in doing a documentary, but like Kevin said, I had never done one. I only had experience in the narrative filmmaking world, making shorts and my feature film since. And so when Kevin proposed the idea, and we kicked it around for a little bit, I thought, I do think there's something there. And I think there's certainly an audience for this beyond just the people that are into records. So those are the things that intrigued me right off the bat. And then, well, when you go digging for records, you go down some rabbit holes. So that was going to be a fun part of the process as well.
So watching this film here in Wichita, it obviously struck a chord because here in our neck of the woods, it was great seeing Mills Records Shop in Kansas City, Missouri, and Quality Record Pressings in Salina, which a lot of people might not be aware of, by the way. So it was really great to see that. So I'm laid the groundwork for the roadmap, so to speak, of how you picked sort of the places and people that you wanted to highlight in this film.
So when we started doing pre-production, like Kevin said, we started kicking around the idea in March of 2018. And then pretty soon we started to put together a list of people that we needed to talk to just to understand the environment, the industry, all of that a bit better, and then just find record collectors as well. And the deeper we got into it, the more we, specifically, as you mentioned, Quality Record Pressings in Salina, Kansas, we kept hearing from people about and if you're going to get a record pressed and you really care about the pressing, you're going to go to QRP. And we're like, really? Okay. And so it came up time and time again. So okay, we've got to talk to these people. And lo and behold, they're in Salina, Kansas. And I mean, that is not what we expected, but okay, there we go. So again, we put together a Google map as we were doing pre-production. And as we were having phone conversations and trying to decide, is this someone we think we should put on camera for this? We started dropping pins in the map, because if you're going to call Film Vinyl Nation, you can't just go to New York and LA and Nashville and just call it a day. That's not going to work. So we wanted to make sure we were covering as much of the country as we could. And I got to say, Salina, Kansas is almost the dead center of the country. And it's just, a little north of you guys. So that was okay, we've got to go there. But going to Salina, Kansas alone, that may not make a whole hell of a lot of sense. And as part of our process, we were looking for record store owners. And specifically, we said, let's try to find some record stores that are owned by women, because that seems like a story that isn't very well told, even though we know there are plenty of women out there who own record stores. And as part of that process, we met Judy Mills over the phone. And as soon as we got off that conversation, Kevin and I said, I think we need to go to Mills Record Company for Record Store Day, because Judy obviously has this down and puts on a huge event. And that, I think, will be really well represented on film. And I think that's a great example of what Record Store Day should be. So then all of a sudden it's like, perfect, we're going to lock that in, go to Kansas City for Record Store Day, and we'll head out to Salina as well. Now it makes sense that it's like, it was a perfect synergy. It wasn't an excuse. It's like, okay, now's the way like everything had to happen. Do we have enough people in the same geographic area that it made sense to fly to that part of the country? Because Kevin lives in San Francisco. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Our DP, Sherry Kalk, lives in Los Angeles. And then we had to pick up local people for sound and PAs and stuff like that. So we really had to make sure we could cover the map, but we were judicious in our spending. But anyway, that is what brought us to your neck of the woods. And so we're really excited that our film is coming to the Tallgrass Film Festival so that you can see your state represented in Vinyl Nation.
Awesome. So, you know, one of the things that I mean, this is like an exhaustive film. I mean, like everything is covered here, you know, from, you know, the history of the medium to, you know, the CD taking over to the manufacturing, you know, the ethical dilemma of cats, you know, sort of breaking out of this white boys club. Is there anything that you wanted to cover that you couldn't fit into the film, maybe?
Good question. I mean, we had an obscene amount of footage because we we shot it on 4K, and then at the end of each, and then we had 6 weeks of shooting because we did not have the budget for all of us to pile into an RV and drive all across the country and spend 12 weeks together doing that. So we did 1 week on, 1 week off, 1 week on, and then we'd go home in between each week of shooting. And at the end of each week, at the end of each period of shooting, Chris would download everything we had filmed onto a duplicate set of hard drives, and I would go home to California with one, and he would go home to Albuquerque with the other. God forbid someone, you know, we had one set of drives and someone's luggage got lost or something. That would have meant the whole week of filmmaking was for naught. But I think, like, I don't think there is a specific, Chris, you might have a different answer to this. I don't think there's a specific area of the subject that we didn't get to cover in the documentary. But we were so fortunate to talk to everybody we talked to for this movie. We interviewed 45 people, and we really just wish I think we could have just wished we could have included more of them. We wanted to make sure the movie was 90 minutes, and that was really important to us. But, you know, like Jean-Luc, who owns Headline Records in West Hollywood, the punk record store, we had an amazing time talking to him. And he has this tiny little record store on this very expensive strip of commercial real estate, and he has this really, really loyal following of young people who come to his record store. We filmed there at like 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, and by 10:50, there were all of these kids on the sidewalk banging on the door, demanding to be let into the record store. And we were only there for a half an hour or so afterwards. I'm positive those kids were there all day. Like that was the sort of clubhouse he had set up there for, you know, for punk teenagers and kids in their 20s, and he was probably in his early 50s. And we just couldn't include that kind of stuff. So subject, no, but characters definitely. Like we just really, I think we enjoyed pretty much everybody who was kind enough to let us film them and their record collections.
Yeah, and I would say I agree with that. Subject-wise, I think we covered what we wanted to. There are moments, sure, like Kevin mentioned, from characters that we didn't get to include. And honestly, there are cities that we didn't get to that we wanted to, and that were on our map. And then just due to time and budget, we could not get there. I mean, some that jump out at me, Chicago, Minneapolis, Seattle, Portland, you know, those, like, just right off the bat, like, we wanted, Miami was on our list, and a number of them were very close. Like, it was just, we wanted to stretch like a trip a little bit extra, and it just, either we couldn't get the schedules to line up with the people that we want to interview, or other things fell into place, and we realized we got to spend another day in this particular city because we've got too much content that we need to cover. So we didn't quite get to the full Vinyl Nation, I would think, and that was the one thing that I was like, I just hope I just hope we don't get taken to task for that. And so far, no. But again, there were other stories we told, and yet I feel like the characters that we have in there, the places that we visited, the businesses that we include, the takes that we have, the faces you see, I think they do a great job representing.
Absolutely. I know that you guys have done some releases with this in conjunction with Record Store Day, which is totally brilliant. I guess I'm just wondering what's on the horizon for the film. How are you planning to get it out after this?
We've been lucky enough to get into a couple of great film festivals like Tallgrass, which has been awesome. In a really nice coincidence, they've mostly been in places we didn't get to go for filming, which has been really cool. Even though we can't be there in person, it's been great to get to know areas of Vinyl Nation that we didn't get to shoot the movie in. And of course, like every time we get into a film festival and we meet the people there, even virtually, we ask about. Everybody wants to talk about their local record store and their local music venues that they can't go to right now, and we have found the movie is a really good way to bring people together to celebrate the musical ecosystems of their communities. We also have a relationship with ticketing partners all over the country to show the movie virtually. And we've done that. We've done that through relationships with independent theaters and record stores. So we've been able to, and we've done that in a partnership with them where we split revenues evenly, because it's been our philosophy the whole time that we do not want our movie to be some sort of snapshot of a lost age. In other words, like, God forbid there comes a time when we are all able to safely, see movies in theaters together. And we don't want people seeing our movie in a theater and being like, oh, record stores, those were a nice thing once, and they don't exist anymore. That one doesn't exist anymore because it didn't survive 7 months of lockdown. So it was really important for us that our little movie can do some good for the institutions that have been so good to us. And that's why we've set up our ticketing relationship with it. Chris, did I cover all the details there?
Yeah, but just to add to that, a big reason why we approach film festivals like Tallgrass is that just like art house cinemas and record stores are important to both Kevin and myself and want them to be around after the pandemic, film festivals are very important to us and we want them to be around after this whole pandemic. And so we're really appreciative that there are festivals like Tallgrass that saw our film and loved it enough they wanted to program it, while at the same time we're trying to support art house cinemas and record stores and other partners with our release, because we want your festival community to get to experience this, and then we want them to support your festival so that Tallgrass continues moving forward. So it's been really it's been great, actually, to make these connections with these festivals that realize we are truly all in this together. And really what we want to do is provide great experiences for our audiences, because it is things like film festivals, art house cinemas, record stores that make our cities and our towns and our communities great and places that we want to live. And so again, thank you to Tallgrass for having us on board. And we're just really excited to be a part of your festival.
Our pleasure. Have you guys been bitten by the documentary bug now? You guys thinking about the next thing here?
I was fully afflicted with it before Chris and I started talking. I think it bit me when I saw The Thin Blue Line in high school, and I've been totally in the tank for documentaries since. I like to tease Chris because he's much better at focusing on the task in front of us. I like to tease Chris by texting him at random points during our work week and say, so for our next documentary, and then the one after that, and then the one after that, and he will usually say very smartly, that's great, but let's, we have 17 rotations of Vinyl Nation left. So please keep the needle on the wax, if you will. But it's documentary. I mean, Chris can speak to this more because he's made narratives too. But documentaries have there's a particular quality to them that neither of us realized, which is you spend a lot of time gathering acorns with your footage, and then and you don't really know what they're going to be. Like you think you have to, because like why else would you raise money and have a crew and have a shooting schedule? Why else would you have all of these things dependent on you if you didn't have an idea of what your movie wanted to be? That seems foolish and ill-conceived. But our post-production team were like, because we started talking to them about midway through our shoot, and they were like, I promise you, what you think the movie is about, it is not actually what it's about. And of course, Chris was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, nonsense. We know precisely what our movie is about. And they were right, and I was wrong. And I think, and that was that. I look back on that, Chris, as a really special part of our experience when it sort of dawned on us the movie we were actually making.
Yeah, and that for us to happen in post. I think I can see myself going between the two worlds. Like I like the idea of being able to still have a foot in the narrative world and a foot in the documentary world, and going between the two. I just like telling stories, and I like to explore worlds. And even in the narrative world, I typically write stories because I'm trying to answer questions or learn about something that I'm not too familiar about. Like I want to follow characters that are not like me so I can get into those worlds. And documentary, that's just doing it in real life. Finding an area, a subject, a person that is intriguing that I want to learn more about. But to your last point there, Kevin, like I love the editing process because that is the final rewrite in both worlds. And in documentary, I've known this from just thinking about it and observing from afar, but I knew that's where we're going to pull the story out. I mean, that's where we're actually going to write the narrative for this film. And we were really fortunate to work with a fantastic post-production team. Jason Whaling is our post-production supervisor, but also one of our editors, and David Fabello, his partner and fellow editor, just did an amazing job calling through all the footage that we sent to them, and our assistant editor, Jacoby Alvarez, too, and finding key moments that really spoke to them and putting together scenes based on those moments, while at the same time trying to adhere to our initial outline of the story that we wanted to tell, and then merging those two things together. And then I just love getting under the hood at that point in time and really tinkering with it with the editors to try to get it fine-tuned down to that 90-minute runtime. That to me is just really exciting, where everything comes alive. And you do have to make tough decisions. You do have to leave things on the cutting room floor. But ultimately, you're doing it in service for the story that you want to tell, and just to make sure that it keeps moving forward and it's going to pull the audience forward as well. So yes, I think I would make documentaries in the future. But again, I do need to tell some other stories that aren't true.
Chris has already said this to me, and if we are going to work together again, this will be one of our considerations. It's not going to be just Kevin finds a story and Chris makes it. Chris was kind enough to come on board for my story this time.
Cool. Well, so as vinyl people tend to be, we really can't go more than 20 or 30 minutes without talking about music and records. So I thought it might be cool, since we're can't meet live, at least maybe since we're safely at home, maybe take a few minutes to just talk about some of our favorite records that we might own and show those off. If it's maybe not the most exciting thing to everybody else, it's cool to us, at least, right? So I've got a couple records here. Do you guys mind if I start?
Please, go ahead.
Thank you. So one of the records I've got, I don't know if you guys are familiar with P. Lander Z. So this is this is sort of a nostalgic piece for me. So when we do the film festival, we're always trying to, do documentary, live band kind of things. We've always tried to make things happen, and timing and budget always makes it very difficult. But we had this movie called Mad Tiger a few years ago, and it's about a band called P-Lander Z. And this looks like a very fun album, and it is. It's kind of a pop punk thing, but the movie is sort of more, like Meeting People is Easy, or Loud, Quiet, Loud. It's sort of a band in turmoil kind of thing. But with, I don't know if you can really see it, but songs like Taco, Taco, Tacos, No More Cavities, How Are USA. So it's, the music, the lyrics are geared, toward like elementary schoolers, I suppose. But I got their signature. So we showed the documentary. They went to this little dive bar a couple blocks away called Barleycorns. Packed the place to the max, about 400 people, give or take. They do human bowling, and they just rock the place. So it was a really great time, and just sort of a callback to when we could, sort of do things live and fun, and again, they they have a whole act. They're from the planet P-Lander, and so this is P-Lander Yellow, P-Lander Red, P-Lander Green. The band is originally, they're from Japan. We're in New York for a while. I think they're now in Austin. So if you ever check it out, P-Lander Z, pretty rad. And then I like
that. Sounds like that was a hoot, man. That sounds like that was just so much fun. Like
super high energy. They come out in costumes, and a lot of audience interaction and everything. And like I say, the movie is very somber. And I wasn't sort of sure like how the audience would react to a show afterwards, but man, they just ripped the place apart, and everybody loved it. And it was a really great time. And then Record Store Day is a pretty great thing that we've come to love. And I don't fancy myself a particularly religious fellow, but I do love gospel music. And I got a hold of this at one time. When I Reach That Heavenly Shore, Unearthly Black Gospel, 1926 to 1936. Early recordings, some really great sermons on here. Like I say, not for everybody, but it's just a really wonderful 3 LP set, and something I really enjoy listening to. And so Record Store Day, really great finds there every now and then. So love those.
Oh my God. Cool. I mean, Nick, I'm Jewish, and I love gospel music. Like I love putting on some Mahalia Jackson or Tommy Dorsey records on a Sunday morning.
Absolutely.
And I would also add that, like, the other movie that got me into documentaries, and I'm convinced to this day is one of the best music documentaries ever made, is Say Amen Somebody, the great gospel music documentary from, I think, '86, is one of the best. It doesn't matter if you don't have any feelings about gospel music, whatever. It is one of the best documentaries about the power of music ever. So,
nothing better for your mood.
Yeah,
absolutely. Christopher?
Oh, okay, sure. I got a couple here. Thanks for the heads up. So I got 3 to share. So the first one I'll share is In Excess Kick. And this one's special to me because this is the first concert that I ever went to. It was just after my 13th birthday, and my oldest brother got tickets for me, and I'm the youngest of 3 boys. Me and my other brother, 3 of us went to that in Philadelphia at the Spectrum. R.I.P. the Spectrum. R.I.P. Michael Hutchins. But I found this actually locally here in Albuquerque. Walked in the Charlie's 33s, and they keep some of their better used vinyl up on the wall, like a lot of stores do. And as soon as I saw this up on the wall, I had to have it. It is in pristine condition. Plays super well. I love how people make such a big deal about, is it, they think, 180 gram or whatever. This is one of my thinnest albums that I own, like totally flimsy. Again, this is coming out in 1987. So like right at the tail end of vinyl being essentially pressed. I mean, I had a CD player by this point in time. Vinyl is going away. Cassettes are still popular, but CDs have essentially taken over at that point in time. As we've learned, like I said, that stat that you had about vinyl superseding CDs, I think we might have mentioned earlier on. That happened for the first time this year since 1986, I think it was, in terms of units. But this thing is so thin and it sounds amazing. So it doesn't matter how thick your records are. It matters how well they were mastered, how well they were pressed, and how well they were taken care of, everybody. The next one I just want to share quickly. The next two are ones that were given to me. And I learned through the process of making our movie Vinyl Nation, not to tell people what I was into, but rather go on a journey of musical discovery along the process. And if anyone offered me a record, instead of telling them what I liked, I asked them to tell me what I should be listening to. So we shot in Austin at Gold Rush Vinyl, which is a newer pressing plant owned and run by Karen Kelleher. And when we were done, she said, "Would you guys like a record?" And yeah, absolutely. And I said, "Give me something I should be listening to right now." So she thought about it a little bit and she pulled out Grizz's Ride Waves. I hadn't heard anything from Grizz at that point in time. I said, "Great. It's this fantastic 2 LP album. It is stuffed full of fire tracks and amazing collaborations across the entire album." When I got home, put it on the turntable, and it stayed on the turntable for several weeks after that. In fact, I love the album so much that Kevin also got a copy from Karen as well. We both loved it so much that we pushed to have one of Grizz's tracks on our soundtrack. So for those of you, stay tuned for the end credits. The Grizz's track, "The Escape," is the last track in our film. And again, I want to thank Karen Kelleher for introducing us to Grizz's Rise Wave. So it has a special place for me there. And then the last one I want to share is an album that Kevin gave to me. Kevin is very generous when it comes to giving people records, and I have been the beneficiary of that many a time. So recently, Kevin sent me a handful of records, none of which I own, most of which I had never heard of. And this is another one that's been on the turntable a ton recently. Yola's debut album, "Walk Through Fire." I am woefully behind in both the country genre and the soul genre, and what better way to catch up by having a country soul artist all in one. This album it's phenomenal, recorded in Nashville. Dan Auerbach from the Black Keys produced it. It shines lyrically, it shines musically. Yola's voice, I am always drawn to vocals, specifically coming from a singing background myself, and just her voice just cuts through. And then there are some tracks on here that just took me in places like this. I mean, it's country, it's soul, but what is it reminding me of? And there's one track in particular, "Lonely the Night," that all of a sudden it hit me after hearing it a couple of times. Like, what am I thinking? I'm like, oh my God, this sounds like it's a Bruce Springsteen track of all things. Like, Bruce could totally record this with the E Street Band and it would make total sense. And yet Yola makes more sense because vocally it's just super powerful. So thank you, Kevin, for giving me that. So those are my 3 records that I wanted to share. You're up, Kevin.
Oh, okay. I sort of did records as they relate to special people or moments in my life. The very first record that I acquired as an adult was Minnie Riperton's "Perfect Angel," and it was because I was at a dinner party and someone put this record on, and they started it on track 2, which is called "It's So Nice to See Old Friends." And I was like, oh, how appropriate. We're at a dinner party and the track's called "It's So Nice to See Old Friends," and with Minnie Riperton's beautiful voice. And at that party, I asked him why he was a record person, because I hadn't really met anybody who was like my age and who was a record person at that time. And he explained to me as best he could, and I didn't quite buy it. And then he said, well, it just so happens I'm getting rid of this turntable and this amplifier and this entire rig right here because I'm upgrading. And if you want it for a song, you can take it away. And I said, okay. And I gave him what he was asking, which wasn't much money. And I took it home and it was just sitting on my floor. And I said, I guess I'm a record person now. And I didn't know what to do with that. So I called him and I said, what am I supposed to do now? And he said, I will take you record shopping. And so we went to the Amoeba Records in Berkeley, and the very first record I bought, I was like, well, the record that made me ask the question at all was Minnie Riperton's "Perfect Angel." So that's what I did. The other one I have here is by an Australian dance band called Cut Copy. The guys in Cut Copy were graphic designers before they were in a band, which is why they're called Cut Copy. It is the command in Adobe Photoshop or something. This is, I believe, their 5th or 6th studio album. It's brand new. It came out August 28th. It's called Freeze Melt. And basically, Cut Copy is if you have nostalgic memories of Depeche Mode or New Order from the 90s, and yet the sort of dour British Midlands of that music is not something that spoke to you, you want to get into Cut Copy, whose stuff is orchestrated similarly, a lot of synthesizers and great dance beats, but is largely upbeat and joyful. Freeze Melt is a bit more somber and contemplative. This is kind of their kid A of dance music, but still really, really musically very rich and enjoyable. And finally, this is Gumbo by Dr. John. Many of you know Dr. John, the legendary New Orleans piano player. Also the inspiration for Dr. Teeth of the Muppets. Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem were inspired by Dr. John. This is Gumbo, which I believe was his 6th studio album, came out in the mid-70s, and these are mostly interpretations of classic New Orleans songs. There's a few originals, but you got your When the Saints Go Marching In, and you got your Iko Iko and all that kind of stuff. And it's not the most original or daring thing that the legendary Dr. John, now deceased, now of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, did. But if you have any good memories of New Orleans, and I have many, if you have any good memories of New Orleans, if you can think of nothing better than being there on a warm day, having just filled your belly with gumbo and are thinking about sort of setting out into the afternoon and maybe buying some records and looking for some music, this is the album for you. I believe I got it right after my wife and I got back from a trip to New Orleans. And New Orleans was actually the last place we went to before we were all unable to travel anymore. So New Orleans music is very special to me. And that album is sort of a wonderful personification thereof.
I had a trip lined up to New Orleans, I think in April, that was shut down. So I look forward to doing that sometime again. So we'll see. So, well, that was awesome. This was a lot of fun. So Kevin and Chris, I thank you guys so much. I'm glad that we could still do this and chat. And, I look forward to some normalcy at some point down the road. So, whatever you guys do next, we'll have to get you guys to Wichita and have some brews and do something and go record shopping or something in the future. So best of luck with whatever happens next, and I look forward to seeing you guys post-pandemic, I hope. So
same here, Nick. Thank you so much for having us, and thank you to everybody at Tallgrass. This is what a special film festival this is, and we hope to come back and see you all in person someday.
Yes, agreed. Thanks, Nick, and thanks to Tallgrass. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely.